one of the things that's come about as a result of you being in Doctor Who is, you're it's still a part of your life now.
Yes.
That's
how
you and I met.
Yeah.
You do conventions, you do the Big Finish audio dramas, and you have action figures too. Now I think, maybe I'm wrong, like someone will correct me in the YouTube comments or whatever, but like how many characters, like other than the Doctors, how many characters you have? Not one, not two, but 4 action figures.
I guess they must sell or they wouldn't make any more.
Well, yeah, obviously they do. So
Yeah.
like, how does that feel to still have it be a part of your life?
Well, I have Harry for 2/3 of my life.
Yeah.
So that's why she feels like a kind of a twin spirit of myself. It's why everything about Perry and her journey feels so personal. So, James, I have a question for you. You watched Doctor Who as a child, right?
Yes, as a child and as an adult.
And as an adult. Sorry, didn't mean one category against the other. And you grew up watching it on American TV, PBS?
PBS, yeah, which was very different from how it was transmitted. The classic series, and by classic series we mean the first 7 Doctors. Over in America, each serial was broadcast as a single episode. So whereas over we didn't really quite understand that over in England they were broadcast in 25-minute parts of each story each week, whereas over here every week we had a full story. They would put them into what's called omnibus format. PBS would edit all of the parts together, so we would have 1 hour-and-a-half episode, or 1 45-minute episode, or 1 2-hour episode. However many parts you guys had over there, it was one whole thing for us. So we experienced it very differently from you. But yes, it was basically, and most PBS affiliates did that, but yes, it was on PBS over here when I was growing up in St. Louis. Yeah.
I like the sound of that, the whole episode.
Yeah, we had no conception of like cliffhangers at the end of every week. Like, no, that never happened over here. It was just one thing. It was one story. Like the 2 Doctors was one story. It was like a 2-hour and 15-minute story. Like that's what it was.
Oh. And like Caves of Androzani was shot in such a filmic way. I think that must have been amazing to see it as one whole movie.
Yeah, I mean, Caves of Androzani is, if for those of you who don't know, Caves of Androzani is probably widely considered the finest of all Doctor Who episodes, and that was the second time you did a story for Doctor Who, and I think as a kid, I didn't fully appreciate it. There's a lot of I have memories of watching all of the classic Doctor Who episodes from Hartnell through McCoy, but revisiting them again as an adult, as I have been doing kind of lately, now that the Blu-rays are out, and Pluto TV, which is a TV network over here, has a Doctor Who 24/7 channel, which broadcasts Doctor Who round the clock, and we can tune in anytime you're watching classic Doctor Who. And I just recently rewatched Caves on it, and I just, you and I were talking about it a couple of weeks ago, how just an absolutely amazing job the director Graham Harper did with that episode, and how, like you said, he shot it like a feature film, which was very unusual for BBC at that time. It's done often now, but at the time, that was very unusual. So yeah. Re-experiencing that and re-experiencing it in a 90-minute format is just, it's pretty amazing.
So how did you come from watching Doctor Who, watching Colin and I, and ending up casting both Colin and I in Star Trek Continues?
Yeah, I was introduced to Doctor Who with Tom Baker, as pretty much everyone was in the United States, because those were the first episodes that PBS stations bought over here, were the Tom Baker ones. So that's to us, we didn't have any concept of regeneration, or there were other doctors before or after. It was just Tom Baker. And then like Logopolis happened and he changed, and we're like, what's going on? And it really freaked everybody out over here. So and I was very, very young at that time. And so I have kind of vague memories of watching it with my dad and my brother, and sometimes my sister as well, who were even younger than I was at the time. But when I was in middle school, Colin Baker was the doctor. And that was where I kind of like decided that I wanted to go into film directing as an occupation. And it's interesting because as has been well documented, and I don't have to tell you this, but the Colin Baker years, there were a lot of trials and tribulations behind the scenes. And we were aware of that over here because at that point, Doctor Who had become a huge phenomenon in the United States. And so it was all over the news. And so we as viewers were very conscious of what was going on behind the scenes and all the problems and stuff. And I was fascinated by you guys' episodes because it was the first time they really had a doctor who was not just this kind of pleasant chap. And your relationship with him started very, very contentiously, and gradually changed over time, which I loved. There was a nice arc for you guys' relationship, and I was fascinated by that as a younger kid who was deciding what I wanted to do with my life, and I thought, I want to do that. I want to work with people like that. And then I after I did several things, I got brought on to direct Star Trek Continues, and I'm trying to remember when I know what it was. So there's a great convention over here called Gallifrey One.
Yeah.
Right.
And Colin and I go not every year, but some years. And Colin had already, I don't know whether you'd already got Colin first, hadn't you?
No. So what it was. So an amazing guy, a friend of ours, Sean Lyon, runs Gallifrey One, and so one year that I found out that you guys were going to be there, and I said to Sean, I was just like, look, I would love, and they wanted to do like an on-stage panel with you guys, and I said, look, I would love to be the interviewer, and I would love to talk to them about the two doctors, because Fraser was there also. So I want to talk to them about the two doctors and the things that happened during the Colin Baker era. And so Sean said, be my guest, do it. So I got to host the kind of onstage interview with you guys. And that's the first time that I met you and Colin. I think I met you the night before. Like I pulled you aside at a party the night before or something and told you I was going to do this. But Colin and I got to be friends, and we actually went shopping at the Glendale Galleria the next day because he needed a shirt for a role that he was doing. And as I was driving him around LA and we were going shopping and getting coffees and things, he asked me what I was up to, and I told him, oh, I'm doing this new web series called Star Trek Continues. And he had heard of it, he was familiar with it, and and so I got to thinking, well, man, maybe there would be a really good role for Colin, because the next episode that we were doing, there was a role of this very kind of leader of this very formal planet, and I thought that Colin would be great for that role. So I talked with the team at STC, and we all agreed that he would be good for it. We asked him to do it. He agreed to do it. He flew over to our sets. We shot in Georgia. And of course, that was a huge treat for me because, again, like I said, I grew up watching you guys, and that was an incredible experience, being able to direct this guy who's like an icon for me when I was growing up as a kid,
Absolutely. Making your dreams happen.
It was amazing. Yeah. Just directing. I was like, man, I'm directing Colin Baker. This is so cool. But of course, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I really kind of would like to work with Nicola Bryant also, but I don't know her that well. And then I guess like a couple years later at Gallifrey.
So I said to Colin.
That's right, yeah.
I really liked the show because his episode had I don't know if his episode, I think his episode had come out. But anyway, I said, I really like the show. It's great. And he said, oh, you should just ask the guys. And I was like, no, no. He said, oh, come on, And so he just took me over. We were in the green room, weren't we? And
Yeah.
Colin said, hey, Nicola would really love Star Trek Continues. And you just stared at me like I'd said something really weird.
Right.
Because you were like, wow, that's great. Would would you want to be in it? And I was like, yes. And then you were like slightly annoyed.
I was.
Moment. Yes.
Well, because because I was like, I wish you had said something before. But you know what? This is another one of those serendipitous things because it all worked out.
Yeah.
Because there had been a number of episodes we had shot at that point. We were well into the show, and there were a number of places that I thought you would have been great in. And I was just like, damn it, why didn't you say something before this? And but it just so happened, and I remember I even pulled you aside later, and I was just like, I'm kind of upset with you because you never said anything to me. But it worked out perfectly because we were just about to shoot our series finale. And in the series finale, the main guest star character is this girl, Lana. And we were like, well, wait a minute. No, Nicola would totally work for that role. And so, and it's a 2-episode role. So we wound up getting you for 2 episodes, episode 10 and 11, the 2 final episodes of the series.
It was so much fun to do. She was a lovely role, beautiful script. There's that story. I really enjoyed doing it. And there's that thing, how you were annoyed at me at first because I'd not had the guts, the courage, I don't know, to just come up and say, hey, I really like your show. I want a part in it. But if I had, I wouldn't have had that part.
That's exactly, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, yeah. You could have, blackmailed me like you blackmailed your union, but you didn't. And it's a good thing because, I distinctly remember in the green room at Gallifrey a couple of years later when Colin came over to me, he was just like, so Nicola has something to say to you. I was like, okay. And then you were just like, I'd like to be in your show. And so, the rest is history. So, so if people who are watching the show haven't seen Star Trek Continues, please go to StarTrekContinues.com, shameless plug, and watch it. And Nicola just does an amazing, amazing job in episodes 10 and 11. But I encourage you to watch the entire series before that because there's a lot of arcs that kind of tie up in the finale. But yeah, it was so great working with you. And then after that, we became friends. I don't know why, because I can't stand you. But
right back at you.
Yeah, I don't.
We're half a world apart. So
that's true.
Cope.
So it just, again, that's one of those interesting serendipitous things where everything just kind of worked out perfectly.
Exactly. And I think it was actually Colin who said she should have a part. I think he said it for me.
Did he?
Yeah, I think.
Okay, he might.
That's something to say. And I think I said, I really like your show. And then Colin went, and she should be in it.
Okay, that's probably right. You're probably remembering it better than I did, but because I was just like, yeah.
But that set was just amazing. Working there was just the love that had been put into producing that show was incredible. I just couldn't get over the captain's chair and those buttons that were exactly the buttons from the ice cube molds.
Yeah, the ice cube molds, exactly. The Star Trek Continues sets, which still stand right now. They've been renamed the Neutral Zone Studios, and they still are. They're in Georgia, and they're so amazingly accurate, and they're designed for production, because that's what we did for 5 years. And we just couldn't be prouder of the show. It was an interesting challenge to direct it because Star Trek, the original series, was shot in a very what we would call now, unfortunately, a dated style. It was shot in a very 1960s way. the camera movements. I mean, there's not a lot of, there's no steady cam, a lot of locked off shots. So I was constantly finding myself as a 21st century director trying to kind of, kind of, subdue my instincts for how I would want to direct. Like, for example, for like an action scene, you watch an action scene in Star Trek, the original series, it doesn't look like a modern action scene. It doesn't look anything like you would see in a Star Trek series today or any series today. So I was constantly finding myself saying, not how would I direct this, but how would this have been done in 1969 if they were doing this? And that was an incredible challenge as a director, and as a writer, on the show, because you're like I said, you're kind of subduing your natural instincts as a director. So how did that impact your performance in any way? Or
I mean, I did feel like I was doing a bit of time traveling, which I constantly feel like I'm doing, because it did feel like it wasn't being filmed as a modern series. It doesn't particularly, I mean, the thing you're always going for is obviously the authenticity, the playing of the character and their situation and their journey. But we were definitely filming it. It felt a little bit like going back to doing the original Doctor Who too. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of locked off studio shots then. But it's what makes it look so brilliant. It's why it's so popular. It's why it's been so successful, because it seems it is perfectly authentic.
That was the idea, and
with polystyrene rocks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had that whole planet set.
I have one in my sitting room. I have.
Oh, you took one of them.
Yeah, I was given one.
Well,
you know, but I have my Lanzarote real rock and my Planet of Fire rock, and then my Star Trek. So this size-wise, that's how they appear. My great big Star Trek fake rock on a shelf displayed.
Right. Wait, so you took a rock from Planet of Fire?
I did. Yeah, which afterwards I found out you're not supposed to do.
Right, that's what I thought.
Yeah. No, you're not, but I did take one. So I may be arrested after this show goes out.
Yeah.
Well, it's been great talking to you, James. We are going to keep this going for quite some time. There's lots to discuss.
There is lots to discuss. So thank you guys for tuning in to In Isolation with Nicola and James. And we'll see you next week.
Thank you, guys. Take care. Be safe.